From Del Rio, Texas, home of Lake Amistad, your host, Rob Wade. This guy who dives. This episode of This Guy Who Dives, recorded live Sunday, 25 June, 2017, episode 176. What's the situation? Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of This Guy Who Dives, and I am your host, Rob Wade, and I am getting accosted by one of our dogs trying to get up in the chair here. So let me switch cameras here. Come on, buddy. Here he is. Of course, he waits right until we're ready to start the show. It's hard for you to see, but I'm literally sitting on the edge of my seat. And the camera just got bumped because our foster dog has decided to plop down there right by the camera tripod that's in front here. Just trying to make some adjustments to the sound here. I guess it sounds like it's coming out okay on the big screen there. So I hope everybody is doing well. We had to rebroadcast an episode last week because we were working on some things for the show because we did get it cast, and I'll be sharing a little bit of info about that. Put my glasses where I can see what I'm doing here. And we're going to be hitting some of our regular segments right off the bat. So let's start off with our movie review. As I mentioned before, this year was going to be a bit of a challenge when it comes to movies to see, because it's been kind of a dry year for me as far as movies that we're interested in seeing. Now that we're moving into the summer part of the year, and then towards the end of the year, things should pick up a little bit. We're seeing more movies that we're actually excited about, and the one we saw this weekend was where's the screen region? There we go. Transformers: The Last Knight. And I have to say, as far as the visuals, again, they did a really good job. It was fine. But as far as the actual story, I was disappointed. You know, sad part is I really liked the last movie. I liked Mark Wahlberg in the movie, and it was a decent enough story, etc., and exciting. But now it's like years later after the events, or at least several months later since the events of the previous movie. And so, you know, it's a brave new world dealing with more of the Transformers showing up. And I don't know, it's almost like they were having a hard time coming up with a decent script to tell a story, you know. And I was disappointed in the story. There was a lot more language in this movie than in previous ones, and there were a lot of kids in the audience. I mean, let's face it. You do a Transformers movie, there's kind of an expectation that you're going to have kids in the audience, and there were a lot of really young ages. So I don't think parents were prepared for the level of language or amount of language that was in here. I don't recall any F-bombs being used, but just the same, it was Really. Um, so, and unfortunately, even though the advertisements the for the movie seemed to indicate this was the final chapter, that they're going to be done after this, but really it so obviously left it wide open for yet another movie. So I don't I hate it when they do that. If you're gonna be finished with it, be finished with it. You don't need to create the buzz. Oh, you got to see the last movie because it's awesome. Blah blah blah. Um, you don't have to do that buzz and then turn around and blow everybody's expectations by not actually having some finality to it. If you're going to be done with it, be done with it. So, all right. So overall, I give this movie a 6.5. I think the previous movie was better, significantly better than this one as far as the whole story and everything. This one had the potential for being awesome, but it just rolled in more history that didn't make sense, and they didn't really do a good job of explaining how we got to the point where where the movie started. We don't we There's some inferences, but nothing really expected. Now I will say it didn't help that there were people behind me, a father and a son, who were talking through the entire movie. I just wanted to reach over and smack them. I mean, come on, really, people? It's unnecessary to talk through the whole movie. I get it every once in a while. If there's something that happens that you need to explain something to somebody because they don't get it, all right, I can be that forgiving. I can be that magnanimous, I guess. But talking through the whole darn film, really? I mean, seriously? It was ridiculous. So, and that just made it even more frustrating. The movie wasn't as good as I was expecting, and it was annoying to have somebody speak talking the whole time. So 6.5 is what I'd give that movie. Now, suppose the one of the dive movie that I was really really excited about, 47 Meters Down, was supposed to open on the 16th, and it's nowhere to be found here. You know what? Matter of fact, let me see if there's any chance that it's on Vudu. Sometimes first run movies will be available on Vudu, and you can rent them, even though they're actually in theaters at the moment. Let me see if I can pull that up, because if it is, that's going to be my outs, because we live in a small town. Del Rio's a small town, okay? So the bottom line is and we only have 8 theaters, and typically, especially if you have a kids theater or an absolute expected box office hit like a Star Wars movie, at least 2 theaters, possibly 3 theaters, are going to be taken up by showings of that particular movie, and so you're only getting maybe 5 or 6 films for the 8 theaters that you have. All right, I'm on Vudu. Search for movies. 47 Meters Down. Well, it has the link. Has the poster. Okay, so evidently only the trailer is available. I don't want to play the trailer. I just want to see if the movie's available. So evidently it's not available. Darn. So I will have to wait to see if it ever makes it around. So eventually it may make it to Vudu after it's been out at the theaters for a bit. But it was supposed to be released on the 16th, and it was not to be found. You know what? It just occurred to me, should I check the Eagle Pass movie theater? use Bing here to check it out. Bing, Eagle Pass Movie Theater. Oh, they have a Cinemark there as well. Let's see. Yeah, this doesn't help me because it wants to look at my current location. I'm not. I don't want that one. Will give me another choice. No, change location. Can't search by zip code. Ugh. Come on, really? This is frustrating. Whoa. No, 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 no. Oh, well. I'll have to search because it's not giving me the right information, sadly. Oh, well. So anyway, I will probably be looking for that on Vudu. I was really excited about this movie because it's a dive movie, and I know that some of the premise is going to be unrealistic, or certainly have some teachable moments, but it's still a diving movie, so I'm excited about it. And but one I really, really think was awesome. It was a great learning experience, and it's a true story. If you haven't seen it, go out and check out Diving into the Unknown. That is just a spectacular dive documentary, if you will. It's actually footage from an actual event that happened in cave diving. Amazing stuff. So, all right. One thing I wanted to share, finally got my car fixed, and the only reason why it's kind of poignant at this point is because when you'll see why it's poignant. We had not had our car very long before somebody decided to rear end me, and luckily it wasn't really a bad hit, and it didn't create any huge damage, but it was mostly superficial. But still, it's disappointing. You get a car that's new to you. We don't buy brand new anymore, but you get a car that's new to you, and then you end up getting hit. It's just kind of disappointing. And so the car that got finally fixed is our 2013 Camaro, which is funny. Everybody calls it the Bumblebee, although this is not the Transformer edition. If it were, right there underneath the Camaro logo there, you would see the Transformer head there. That's what they put on the Transformer edition. But every time I drive around, the little kids, you see them or you hear them say, "Oh, it's Bumblebee." And of course, we pulled up to see the Transformer movie in this car, and it was just kind of funny, the reactions that the kids get. I went to the grocery store this afternoon to pick up some things that we needed, and I see all these little kids coming out, and they're like, "Oh, it's Bumblebee!" It's just funny, and I just smile and wave at them. It's not Bumblebee, but they think it is, and if I can bring a little fun and joy to little kids, I'm cool with that. It's all right. So anyway, that's why it was exciting to finally get our car back. Man, I need to make some adjustments on this screen because, wow. Oh, there we go. That's better. Wow. All right, cool. Just making some adjustments because I couldn't get the boom for this microphone where I needed to be. Is because I had evidently at some point I pulled the screen a little bit closer. And it was blocking the boom from coming down. You can see part of it sticking down here. Oh, the trials and tribulations of running a home studio. All right, so we did mention on the last live broadcast that Tara and I were getting the opportunity to sing the national anthem in conjunction with the Gary Sinise Foundation event near Canyon Lake to present a home to a wounded vet. And so it was an awesome experience, very humbling, seeing not just the all the people involved, and getting to meet Lucas Sivka and his wife and son, and the folks that work with the Gary Sinise Foundation and the RISE program. But there were some other vets there, and it was just hearing the story and getting to meet some of the people involved as also with his recovery, because it's a long road. I mean, literally it has been a multi-year road to recovery for Army Staff Sergeant Sivka to get well again, and it was just an awesome experience. And if you go to their Facebook page, let me switch screens here. There we go. If you go to the Gary Sinise Foundation page, you'll see a number of things that they do, including stuff with the Lieutenant Dan Band, which, of course, Gary Sinise is the bass player, forward singer, etc. But here's just a little bit. Here's Tara and I singing the national anthem for this event, and just a little bit. I may skip around the video. So the Army Color Guard presented the colors. So it was cool working with them.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
You see me, but you can't see Tara tonight.
We hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets wrecked them, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
So let me skip forward a little bit here. There we go.
Guide him once again, Lord.
Did a prayer. See if I can get to the part where he spoke a little. I mean, there were so many people involved.
To call you my friends and to be here today to celebrate you. I'm so happy for you three and wishing you all the best as you finally put down roots and settle into your forever home. The great state of Texas is lucky to have you. Thank you.
Before I introduce the next...
So I tell you, that's a fantastic of event. I wonder if they have, let me skip forward and see if they show any of the home. I know they had, no. There we go. That's the smart home that was given to them by the Gary Sinise Foundation in partnership with the funding partners and all the folks that donated work, materials, equipment. Very high-tech home, all controlled by an iPad. Amazing, amazing. So real quickly, his story was he was in Afghanistan on a foot patrol and stepped on the pressure plate for an IED, and it's, of course, destroyed his legs, shattered part of his spine, some other issues. And his first sergeant carried him to safety and to first aid, and without him, it would have been a fatal situation for Staff Sergeant Sivka. So it's just amazing here the stories of these heroes and the kinds of things that they overcome to get where they are now, where they and you could tell it's still an adjustment for him to be around people. He's reminded of things. I mean, I can't even imagine the things that they as a family were going through, and that he is still experiencing even now. That is such a huge adjustment. But congratulations to Sergeant Sivka and his wife and son on a wonderful event, and I hope this home goes at least partway to bringing some normalcy back to their lives. It was an honor to be part of an event like that. Of course, Tara and I do the national anthem a lot, especially this time of the year, every other year, because there's a lot of ceremonies that go on a fairly regular basis, and so we get involved in a lot of that, and it's fun, and it's an honor to get involved in those, participate in those things. Real quickly on tech news, Microsoft finally started rolling out the update to their OneDrive that brought back a feature that had long been part of Windows 8 that I always loved, which was the placeholders or the files on demand. The nice thing about that feature is, and I think other cloud storage services have something similar, and Microsoft had it with OneDrive, and then when they went to Windows 10, they lost so many features that were part of Windows 8, and they gave them up or took forever to bring them back in Windows 10. Stupid. But OneDrive placeholders was one of those. Let's face it. If you're wanting to use cloud storage for things and sync those with your devices, your smartphone, your tablet, your PC, different devices accessing that material, that data, may have different storage capacities. Now, yes, ideally you would have an unlimited data plan that it gives you really quick access, high-speed access all the time. But you know what? The bottom line is very few people have that. And when you're like us out here on the border of Mexico, you don't have high-speed internet access via your cell phone a lot of the time. You get outside of the town proper and you start to lose your signal, and you certainly can't expect to be pulling down large files or get decent streaming of your music on the cloud, etc. But we have come to rely heavily on the cloud as a way to back up, make available all of our files, no matter where we're at, no matter the situation. And that's interesting. Stop playing. And so there are some things that we decide that we want to keep on our devices because it's just faster to access them. I have a lot of chord charts for music that we play, and it's much more convenient. It's faster if I can simply pull them right off the local storage on the device, whatever it is, typically my tablet. If I'm trying to pull it from the cloud, I have to make sure I have a connection to the cloud. Well, obviously my tablet doesn't have a connection to the cloud. I have to tether it to my phone or hope that there's Wi-Fi available where I'm at, which is a pretty rare thing. If you're in the inner city, big cities, chances are there's a lot of free Wi-Fi available everywhere. Out here, not so much. If it's pretty rare when you find it available in various shops, so you better have it yourself. So, but you have limited storage. All the things that we have on the cloud, which is everything, we can't store those on our devices. There's only so much storage. So having the placeholders to say, okay, these folders I want to keep synchronized, and these folders I don't. But that for the folders I don't, I can choose to, if I open them, then it will go out there to the cloud and pull down a copy, the latest copy version of it, for me to use locally. Now, eventually you end up having to unclick them and say use online, make available online only to get your space back. But it's a much better way to have at least awareness of all the files you have out there and then download, grab the ones that you need. So they finally brought that back, files on demand, and quite happy. Just a quick reminder, again, July 15th is Patty Women's Dive Day. So check out, go to patty.com, check that out. Look for a supporting event in area near you. Is promoting the expansion of women in diving, which it's a growing number. My next class, I've got kind of a 50-50 split, male and female. So it's a growing trend, but they're trying to encourage it even more. And what here's something I can tell you just from sheer fact that I know because I've observed it myself. Women tend to be better divers. They're more conservative on their air, because typically their bodies are just that better at it. They have smaller lungs, etc. And they just tend to be much more calm and controlled divers than guys. Guys can be aggressive and kind of push things a little bit further than they really should. Let's see. Oh, yes, we as I mentioned earlier, the Upstagers did have the auditions for our next show, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels the musical, and we selected the cast, and I have a shot here. Let me switch to not screen region. Here we go. This is not the entire cast, but this is most of the cast, and it is the principals. So you see me standing there and with my wife right in front of me, Tara. So I have got one of the male leads as Lawrence. In the movie, if you saw the movie Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, that role was played by Michael Caine. So I get to do a number of accents, which is kind of fun. Tara plays the role of Muriel, which in the movie is not a significant part, but is a much bigger part in the play. And then right next to her in the blue is Clarissa Martinez, who was my leading lady in She Loves Me, but she's also now the female lead in this show. And that role was played by Headley. Let me see if I can find it. She just passed away, which is really, really odd timing. Odd timing. See if I can find it. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Headley. There we go. Glenn Headley. She passed away. Oh, hate advertisements. Let me switch to screen reach so you can see that. So that's who passed away. She was the character that Clarissa was playing, Christine, in the movie. She was in the movie. She just passed away. She was 63. So sad. So anyway, and then another supporting cast member, Angie, is playing Jolene, which is kind of a fun little role, little girl from Oklahoma's who my character tries to get money from. And she turns the tables and basically kind of starts to railroad him into a marriage, and hilarity ensues. Right next to her, Scott Fushi, who is playing a character who also was minimized in the movie, but is a much more significant role in here. He's Andre, the chief of police, and also my cohort in crime. And then all the way at the end there in the hat Colin Montgomery. He's playing Freddie, who is he was the Steve Martin role in the movie, and so and he's fun to work with. He's fun in this show. It's the music is just hilarious. The whole show is just plain silly. So if you find yourself in the Del Rio area in first 2 weekends of August, you can check out this show. It is so worth it. It's going to be a blast. We're really looking forward to it. Costumes should be fun as well. All right, so Tara and I are members of Divers Alert Network, or DAN, and I tell you, I can't encourage enough for you, if you're a diver, to get some dive insurance, get some insurance with them. It's not that expensive. It's well worth it to have that peace of mind that if something goes wrong, you have an entire organization that does huge amounts of studies on dive medicine, dive physiology, dive accidents, and they have experts 24/7, 365 available that you can call their toll-free number to get help, and they will help you understand the situation that you're experiencing if you have an accident, and they will help coordinate getting you to the proper kind of medical care. If you need a recompression chamber, they'll get you connected to that. You can get flights out, or whatever the situation is. It's the kind of help that they can give you is amazing. But in addition to that, they have tons of educational resources, studies, etc., that can help you make a much more situationally aware diver. They're constantly working internationally to get more information to divers about diving and how you can make your experience much better, much more enjoyable, and certainly safer as you expand your experience. Now, one of the things that they have is, if you look here, they've got tons of resources, and they work well with instructors in the business to provide what's the word I'm looking for? Secondary courses, secondary education for different types of things, and one of the courses that they've started advertising is the Prepared Diver course. Let me switch to my screen region here. So here's their site. So you can see all your information, see courses, etc., information about your profile, what you have, what you've signed up for, and they have a lot of different courses. And here's the one I'm talking about tonight. The Prepared Diver course focuses on 5 contributing factors, each preventable, that lead to diver injury and death. And you can, if you're an instructor, you can incorporate this into your classes. So I may be looking at trying to add this in as part of maybe not the basic. We'll see. Why do I have somebody call? Oh, you should know I have my podcast. Maybe looking at incorporating this, if not in the basic course, certainly with the advanced course, because this would be great information to help folks be better divers. So with this in mind, I was looking at some of the information in the study, and wanted to share with you the 10 factors that Dan has isolated that throughout 2016 were issues that, if they were addressed, would significantly improve diving experience and outcomes. So without any further ado, here we go. All right, so here's some things that you should ask yourself. Are you situationally aware? Are you keeping really good attention to these things? Now, I will be honest with you. it's easy to get complacent with a number of these things, especially if two things are your case. You dive infrequently, like maybe once a year, and your whatever diving experience you have is always with dive operations who pretty much take care of you hand and foot. In other words, they do it all for you, and all you have to do is get wet and get in the water, do the dive, and get back out. So here's some things that I try to stress as part of the class, but they're things that you should be aware of always. So correct weighting. You'd be amazed how much more air you're going to go through if you are overweighted, because you're constantly having to add more air to your BC to compensate, because it's a buoyancy compensation device. You have to add much more air to your BC in order to compensate for the fact that you've added more weight. Now, it's bad enough if you happen to be overweight already, or you have a lot of extra equipment hanging off your gear. You've become a Christmas tree, as they call it. But if you've added way too much weight because you've not used the proper weight check technique, then you're going to go through your air much faster. So you're going to have a much shorter experience in your dive than your fellow divers. And also, you run the risk of running into some buoyancy control issues as a result of that extra weight. And again, as a reminder, that proper method for checking your weight is, depending on the type of tank you're using, and which determines when you're going to do this. But what you want is to make sure that you have, if you have the right amount of weight, when you hold a normal lung full of air and there's no air in your BC, you should float right at about eye level. Now, the fact is, aluminum tanks actually lose a little weight as you consume the air. So you actually, if you do your weight checking at the beginning of the dive and you're right, guess what happens by the end of the dive? You're actually a little bit more positively buoyant, and you're going to find at the end of your dive it's harder to stay down, especially if you're shallow. It's easier if you're deeper, but still you're going to have buoyancy control issues. So be aware of the type of tank that you're using. If it's steel, you can do this weight check right at the beginning of your dive and you're good. But if it's aluminum, you should check your weight. You should try doing this to get it zeroed in with a tank that is down to the 500 to 700 PSI level, so that you really get an honest check on it. And then make a note of it. That's why you should maintain your dive log, is because that is where you're going to be able to refer, especially if you don't dive frequently, you'll be able to refer back to that information later. So keep track of that information. All right, so diving more often. I stress with my students, once you get certified, dive as frequently as you can. It doesn't have to be a big, deep dive. You can do something shallow, even if it's just going through the practice in your pool. That's fine. Here in Del Rio, you don't necessarily have to go out to Lake Amistad to get a practice dive in. I have sent many people to San Felipe Creek to just get in the water and do a little diving. And I can't tell you how many times they've come back and said, that was a great call, because it's a low stress. It's, because it's a creek, you may have 11 feet at its deepest. You go out by the Tardy Dam area and you get a little bit of depth to play with, but that's safe enough for you to kind of get your skills back up and then go hit the lake if you need to. Graded buoyancy control. This is kind of tied to the correct weighting, but it's also being aware of what your body's doing. One of the things that I try to instill with the students when they're working with their buoyancy control is work with it frequently enough that you get a sense for what your body is doing, because each diver is different, each dive is different. So the bottom line is, there's a delay in the effect when you inhale, when you exhale. Now, or even when you put air in your BC or let air out. What I see typically with newer divers is they don't get an immediate reaction, so they panic and they oversteer, if you will. Um, when I was working with flight simulators out the base, one thing I had to be aware of is that there is a delay in the effect in you when you're course correcting with the aircraft. And when I got to play with the T1 flight simulator, fly the T1 flight simulator, I actually got very good at, because I've done Microsoft Flight Simulator, I got pretty good at taking off, landing the aircraft, because I became familiar with the profiles and power control. But because I did really well with that, they decided to see how I would do trying to do a mid-air refueling. Let me tell you, I have so much respect for the pilots who do the mid-air refueling. The thing I dealt with there is, the small moves. You start coming up on the aircraft, and it doesn't take, you're really close, and you're just working power control to move up or down or left or right. And it doesn't take much of steering the aircraft before you start this thing, and it becomes worse and worse as you overcorrect, because there's a delay in the effect, and it's getting used to what that is. And that's what the pilots are training for, is getting used to what that delayed effect. I've got no Grace is wanting to come up here, and of course I've got no room because I've already got 2 dogs up here. I'll put you up on this one here. Come here. Nope, you can go on this one. Sit down. There you go. So it takes, there she is in the little seat. She's probably going to yelp at me. So there's a delay. Same thing with buoyancy control. You're cruising along and you realize you need to come up a little bit because you're getting close to the bottom. Great. And then you realize, okay, I need to add air. It doesn't take a lot of air to move up. So you in most cases, all you may have to do is simply inhale a little bit deeper and you'll start to move up. But there's like a beat or two between when you inhale and that increase in your volume and buoyancy starts to move you up. Same by exhaling. You start to see that you're ascending. I was like, oh, I don't want to ascend. Well, exhale quickly and you'll find you'll start to drop, but there's always a delay. So each person is going to be different with that. So you have to make sure that you understand buoyancy control within the confines of your dive profile and how your body acts. More attention to gas planning. Not just gas planning, but gas usage. One of the things that they added a couple of years ago to the PADI basic course is the requirement for students to be able to report to me their actual air supply, that their gauge reads within 300 psi up or down. And the reason why they should be able to do this is they should be checking their gauge very frequently. So at any point, they should be able to just tell me, hey, I'm at 1300 psi, and I should be able to get that information, then look at their gauge and find that they're really close to that. But it's also understanding what how your gas consumption is, and there are some formulas to kind of figure that out based on your own experience. Again, some good reason to keep things written in your dive log. So you plan what your dive is, the rule of thirds for diving. A lot of people get into trouble because they just, I got a full tank and I'm going to go, and the dive master of this dive operation is just going to keep me honest. And no, you should be aware of it yourself, or you will have very, very rusty, if not completely non-existent, skills when it comes to that arena when you're diving. And that's important. It's important to be aware of that. I'm looking for... Where is it? Huh. I was looking to make sure we're still actually broadcasting. I still show it is there, but it's not on the Facebook page. So hopefully you guys are watching this still. Let me refresh the screen in case it's just got some issues. Man, this is slow. Yep, it's still there. Okay, it's just weird. It's just kind of locked up or something. So anyway, better ascent rate control. Again, people get into trouble because they're not paying attention to how quickly they go up. Now, if you dive with a computer, most of your computers are going to give you, there is a gauge on them. There's a little meter, if you will. It's not all that great. It's basically a green, yellow, red flag, if you will, or bar graph that shows you your rate of ascent. And most of them will flash a red light and a beep at you if you're ascending too quickly. Now, we use Oceanic computers in our class and for my students, and it's actually set for an ascent rate of 30 feet per minute rather than 60 feet per minute, which is actually, it's basically half the speed. So it actually is much more conservative, and I'm hearing the rumblings of changes in the dive industry looking to go to that rate as the recommended rate. So, again, you can, and the science behind dive physiology is still, they're still learning things. As technology allows them to really look microscopically at what's happening to the body during a dive, they're learning more and more. And so you can follow all the safe practices, and you could still potentially experience decompression sickness of some type. If you're very conservative in the way you dive, it's much, much less likely than it is likely for you to experience something, but it still can happen because every diver is different, every dive is different. But you can run into a situation where just simply because you came up a little bit too fast from a deeper dive, that you develop micro bubbles in joints and things like that and experience it. You can experience barotrauma from change in barometric pressure because you come up too fast. So a lot of incidents could be avoided if folks would pay closer attention to that. Increased use of checklists. PADI has, and I'm pretty sure all the other agencies have this. PADI has the pre-dive safety check, the begin with review and friend, BWRAF, but it is a checklist of a sort. But I can't tell you how many times I've been on dive operations where nobody's going through that. Now, Tara and I go through that kind of silently, but we're hitting all the main, we're hitting all those required points. But it's always a great habit to get into, to always maintain those checklists. Pilots do it as a matter of course for every flight. They have a pre-flight checklist that they have, and they have a pre-landing, pre-arrival checklist that they go through religiously in order to make sure that they can control the outcome of their takeoffs and landings. Okay? So we should be no different because we're basically flying in slow motion. We're flying underwater. So those checklists are important. Fewer equalization injuries. Now, this kind of is tied with buoyancy control, correct weighting, and better ascent rate control. But different people experience equalization in different ways. I dive so much that my eustachian tubes are so easy to equalize. It's very rare when I have any difficulty equalizing. I can, in most cases, go from the surface, and I can do a headfirst dive. And have no equalization issues. Now, when I teach the class, it's all feet first diving because it is easier on the eustachian tubes. But again, you get to know your own body. The more frequently you dive, the more you get to know what your body's used to, what you can handle. Or there's a good friend of ours who is a dive master. She's got a dive master certification, and she is a great underwater photographer. But her thing is she's extremely slow in equalization, so it takes her a while to work her way down. And I'll be the last person in the world to rush somebody through their equalization. When I'm teaching a class, I run into different people with different experiences, and some take a while to equalize. And some maybe equalize, have no issues equalizing on day one, but then day two, their eustachian tubes or their ears are tired and they have a little difficulty. You know, that's another thing to consider, that you may be normally very good at equalization, but if you go on a dive trip, you're going to be diving a ton. And if, let's say, you only dive once a year, but then that once a year is a ton of diving. Come on up, Ronan. Get one of them. Come here. Pick you up. Give you a chair. Ronan's back. I'm going to put him in the guest host chair. Here you go, buddy. So you may dive only once a year, but that once a year is a week long of 2 dives a day or more. If you do any night diving, or if you do morning and afternoon diving. So that's a ton of diving your body is suddenly going through that you're not used to during the year. So you may find that by the end of the week, you're having equalization issues. And if you're not careful, you may make a mistake and actually try to equalize through too much pressure and burst your eardrums. That will end your diving for the rest of the trip. Okay, it's that simple. Improved cardiovascular health in divers. You know, something I didn't, there's a number of things that can affect your cardiovascular health, but you have to realize when you're diving, your body is going through a lot of work with relatively low impact while you're diving. I mean, it's not like doing a big running exercise, something like that. It feels like, because it's recreational, it feels like you're really not expending yourself. But your body is trying to pump blood through your system under pressure. And the deeper you go, the more pressure your body's experiencing. The regulator and the tank give you a false sense of how effortless all of this is. Okay, so while you're breathing easy, you don't realize your body is really going through being put through the ringer in order to do this. And you're moving through the water column, and so your lungs are having to work, your heart's having to work. And so if you're not in decent shape, you can be running into some issues that can result, among other things, certainly a possible heart attack, but also other barotrauma, because your body is not in the healthiest way to deal, the healthiest condition to deal with those challenges. Something that on the dan.org site that I thought was interesting, that many times just the act of suiting up and getting into the water, just putting on the gear and actually walking to the spot, then you need to jump in the water. That whole scenario puts a lot of people at the max limit for their heart health for their age. And that amazes me. So you're already pushing yourself, you're potentially already pushing yourself to a limit just by gearing up to getting in the water. Okay? So you could have a heart attack if you're not healthy right there. But the bottom line is you need to maintain decent health. Keep your weight down, and I mean physical weight. You know, eat healthy, stay away from bad habits like smoking, don't drink don't drink a lot before you're diving. Actually, I would not recommend diving drinking at all before a dive. But if you've been partying the night before, and you've got morning dives coming up, that's a bad idea, because that's still going to be in your system, and you're changing your blood chemistry, which also could invite potential decompression sickness issues. Diving within your limits. I mentioned earlier, women are typically better divers in every aspect compared to guys. Guys tend to push their limits beyond what they're used to, what their training has prepared them for, what their experience has prepared them for. I stress this in the classes. I know other instructors stress this in the classes. Don't dive beyond your limits. Don't dive beyond the limits of the equipment that you have either. You don't want to try and pull off a night dive with just a glow stick, okay? You're going to put yourself already in a higher stress situation because it's a night dive, and you're going to put yourself in higher risk factors because you can't see, and a glow stick is not the best way to see anything underwater. Make sure that you've had the proper education, and by that I mean formal dive training, for the type of diving you're doing if it goes outside the basic class. Now, the advanced course just prepares you a little bit more by exposing you to more scenarios. But it's not all the scenarios you could experience. There are a couple of required ones, but the bottom line is it's just an introduction to at more advanced diving types. So, for instance, when I teach it, I've got the deep dive, got a night dive, got a wreck dive, got the complex navigation dive, and the diving in a current. Because those are the typical situation you can find yourself in. But really, those are just introductory dives to the specialty for each of those things. So you can take a advanced course. You could take a specialty for complex navigation. You can take a specialty course for deep diving, for night diving, etc. But again, make sure you've got the experience commensurate with the type of diving you're going to do. And then fewer equipment issues. Check out your gear. Don't just dive, stick it in a drawer somewhere, or hang it up in a closet, or throw it in a shed or something like that. Keep your gear up in shape. Rinse it properly after you're done diving. Send it off to be serviced. Take care of your equipment. Don't abuse it. Don't leave it sitting out exposed to all sorts of elements. Take care of it. Replace things that need to be replaced. Replace the O-rings that need to be replaced. Keep things lubricated that need to be lubricated. Take care of your gear, and your gear will take care of you. Remember that ultimately it's life support equipment for your diving, okay? So these are just some of the things that Patty has discovered, that if these issues were dealt with, were addressed regularly by divers, you'd see a lot better dive experience, a lot less injuries, fatalities as part of the dive experience. So hopefully this has been a little bit helpful, more helpful and beneficial for you. I wonder what's going on with Facebook here. I'm still showing as working, but it's not working on the Facebook page for some reason. Hopefully you are able to still watch this. I'm going to refresh my screen. Oh, good. Maybe it's not me, it's you. Maybe it's not you, it's me. Interesting. Live video interrupted. Why was it interrupted? Let me refresh the page. When in doubt, refresh. I'm not getting any errors on the screen here, so I'm going to assume I'm still plugging along. All right, so let's hit a little bit of our administrivia. All right, so oh, I did not update. I'm sorry, I did not update the Rudy or our dive club meeting. Let me take that off. We will not have a dive club meeting for July because we'll be hot and heavy in the middle of our rehearsals for the show. So let's try that. But next dive classes, July 27th through the 30th. I've already got a couple people signed up, so that one's going to fill up quickly. And then August 24th through the 27th, September 28th through October 1st. And then I can do advanced courses as necessary if I have interest. I'd like to have a minimum of 2 people in that course. Now, obviously, you have to be already a certified diver in order to take the advanced course. I do know some places that will typically try to take you right from the basic to the basic open water course to an advanced course. I never recommend that. I think you need to get a few dives under your belt just so you can really tighten up your skills, because we're task loading you with the advanced course. So you need to be really comfortable with your skills before you take the advanced course. And then you might want to launch from there into any number of the specialties that are available. And we'll be plugging this quite a bit from now until then. The show dates for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, the musical, are August 4th, 5th, 11th, and 12th. There are a number of places in the Del Rio area you can get your tickets. I think you'll really enjoy the show. If you've seen the movie, this is even funnier than the movie because the music is just fantastic. I mean, it's just well written, funny, silly. And we've got a great cast. You will love the cast. If you saw She Loves Me, a lot of the folks from that cast are in this show. I'm in it. Tara was in it. Colin was in it. Clarissa was in it. Scott was in it. Ronald Bailey was in it. So we've got a lot of the cast members from that show in there. So if you love that one, you will love Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, the musical. As always, we try to plug a Pet's Wish, which is our local pet rescue. They desperately need help. They need people to volunteer. They need money to help afford the cleaning supplies, the food, the medicines to help get these animals that are dumped, abused, neglected, get them better, and help defray the cost of the huge costs that they have undertaken as far as getting them to the vet. If you were to see the conditions of some of these animals coming in, and they absolutely have to, so many have had to be taken emergency visit to the vet. So check them out on Facebook. Just look for A Pet's Wish, and then they also have a website. You can donate to the cause. You can donate via PayPal, etc. Please help them out, A Pet's Wish. Right here in Del Rio, Texas, the only pet rescue that's here. By the way, the animal control, the animal shelter here is really it is not a no-kill. So they will only keep down animals a few days, and then they put them down. So often they will try to pass these animals off to A Pet's Wish if they think there's a chance that they might be adopted out, but a lot of them don't make it. If you want to keep abreast of what's going on with the dive community here, you can visit our Dive Club webpage. Just go to delriodiveclub.com. And, of course, if you're watching this live, you're seeing us on our Facebook page, Del Rio Dive Club. And then, of course, we also upload the episodes to our YouTube page, SETI Fox Productions, so you can see that, catch them later. And, of course, you can watch them later. One thing I've noticed with Facebook, though, when they process these shows, the audio is out of sync with the video. But when I upload them to YouTube, I don't have that problem. So if you want to send us a message directly about the show, just send it. Look us up on Skype. Just look for TGWD. And of course, if you'd like to communicate with me directly, send me an email to robert.wade@setifox.net, or you can follow me on the Twitter. Just look for RobertCFP. And you can really see I'm very prolific on Twitter. I'm usually posting a bunch of stuff every day. So those are just many of the ways, some of the ways you can contact me. I hope that you found this episode to be helpful and informative and entertaining. And we may or may not have a live episode next weekend. As we get closer to showtime, our weekends are going to be, we're going to start moving into using a lot of our weekends for set building. We normally get into the theater to do sets the last 2 weekends going into the show. We might get a third weekend this time, I don't know. But very often, if there are set pieces I can build or we can build in our the Upstagers building, because we do have some room to do construction in there, for smaller pieces like tables, counters, those kinds of things, and then we can take them to the theater, then we'll typically spend our weekends to go do that, because it just saves us some time if we can go do those things ahead. And because it's all volunteer, we have to use whatever time we have available. So I will keep you posted. I'll post it on our Facebook pages, Del Rio Dive Club, as well as Seti Fox Productions, and then my own personal Facebook page. If it looks like that we're going to be focusing on set building and won't be able to do a podcast that week, in which case I'll probably try to still do a rebroadcast of one of our previous episodes. So again, we enjoy having you with us. Hope you find this show entertaining and informative, and hopefully we will see you next time on another exciting episode of This Guy Who Dives. We'll see ya.